will be. That's fine. We'll be doing that obviously, and we'll upload it to the Creative SIG forum tomorrow. So, okay, now over to you, Cheryl.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for having me tonight. I'm getting over a bad case of bronchitis, so I apologize in advance if I have to clear my throat or cough. And I've also got my cat, Max, who's decided to join me. So you may hear some meowing in the background too, but hopefully it won't be too bad. So tonight I thought I would talk briefly about how I come up with my ideas, talk about some of the software that I use. I wasn't going to go in depth with the software, but if there's anything you want to see specifically and we have time, I'd be happy to do that. And then I'm going to deconstruct a couple of images in Photoshop layer by layer so you can see how I put it together. Most of my art is kind of painterly. My dad was an oil painter. My sister's a pastel artist. And we have a lot of traditional painters and artists on both sides of the family. So I was kind of exposed to the very traditional painterly art growing up. And so I kind of still like that for my digital art. And also I think that it kind of sets my art apart from a lot of the digital art out there because it is a little bit more painterly. Most of it's very simple. I am a storyteller, so I think it has to tell a story. For instance, I can't create abstract art because there's just no story there. So I love it, but I can't create it. So my art kind of tells a story, or hopefully it tells a story. So what I'm going to do before I start, I'm going to play a short video. It's maybe a minute and a half or so for those of you who haven't seen my art, so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. And then I will get started. So this does have music. If you have any kids around, you need to turn the volume down or anything. I just want to kind of warn you ahead of time. So if you'll give me a minute, I will share my screen and open it up and get started. And let me see, make sure I have sound. And okay, I hope everyone could hear that. And
yeah, that's great. Cheryl, I should just mention, sorry to interrupt, but if people have questions for you as it goes along, they can
interrupt or just ask them as we go along. I'm fine with that.
Right, or they could put it in chat and then I can read it out. Yeah, either way is great. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Let me open up my PowerPoint. So one of the first things that I get asked from almost everyone is, where do you get your ideas and inspiration? My art is kind of all over the place. I do get exposed to a lot of great art because I'm in the Awake group and the Kazan Project, which are artists from all over the world. So I get to see a lot of very creative art, and I get a lot of ideas from that. And also the magazine, Living the Photo Artistic Life, they have some wonderful art. So I get ideas from that. But also I go to Pinterest and find ideas there. I just, if I see an idea, a piece of art that I really love, I'll just use my little snipping tool, and I have an ideas folder, and I'll stick it in there. And so when I get up in the morning and I want to create something, I'll go to my ideas folder and just go through there and see if I find anything that inspires me that day. If not, I'll go to Pinterest and look there. So let me just show you some of the ideas and what I ended up with when I used those ideas. And I think that all of these are probably from Pinterest. So I had and you can see most of them are also painterly. So I found this ballerina on Pinterest that I really liked because it was painterly and I liked the painted background. So what I did was I found a ballerina, and I get models every month from my art groups. We have designers that contribute, and I get like 50 models every month, and I've been getting them for years. So I have literally hundreds of models that I can pull from to create art with. So I found this ballerina. I painted the background and painted her dress, and this is what I came up with for that idea. And the next one, this is a Mexican artist, and can't remember the name right now, but she's on Pinterest. And I liked the horse and the umbrella, and it was kind of a little surreal, which I sometimes like. And so what I ended up with was a sea of stars. And this idea, I love cats. And as a matter of fact, my exhibit right now that's going on at the Floyd Medical Center is called No Dogs Allowed, and it's all cat art. So I do a lot of cats. And this was the idea on the left, and then what I ended up creating using what I liked from that, which was the cityscape out the window, the cat and the girl sitting in the window. So that was what I came up with. And this idea was also from Pinterest, and I loved the little girl in her cave, safely underground. And I ended up making about 3 pieces just using this idea. So the first one was called Down the Rabbit Hole. And the second one was The Guardians with the unicorn and the owl. And then this one is called Stocking Up, the little boy with the raccoon. So I really got a lot of mileage out of that one idea. This idea was, I use sometimes very cartoonish art to create from, and then I'll make it more realistic or make it my own. So what I liked about this one was the artist leaning on a chair with her paintbrush and the easel in the background. And I did 2 versions of this. I did a black and white, and then I did a color version. So those are some of the ways that I take an image and try to make it my own by pulling from the idea what the parts of it that I really like. So the next thing I'm going to talk about are just some of the plugins and software that I use. And I do use a lot of plugins. Sometimes I don't use more than one, but most of the time I do. The ones that I use the most are the classic Topaz Labs programs. Restyle is the main one that I use for color toning. I use Impressions, Texture Effects, Simplify, Black and White Effects, and then Gigapixel AI. And then other programs that I use are Pixel Squid, Flood by Flaming Pear, and Flood makes water and reflections in images. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a great little program. Then I use Rebel 5, which is a painting program by Escape Motions. And it's a plug-in to Photoshop as well. So I can start with something, take it into Rebel 5 and paint on it and pull it back into Photoshop. And Flame Painter is also by Escape Motions, and it's a particle brushes that are light brushes. So they're very different. And Particle Shop by Cheryl, which is very similar, but I like Flame Painter better. So these are the two images that I'm going to deconstruct in Photoshop, Feathers and City Lights. And I picked these because they are a little bit more photographic than a lot of the work that I do. So if you want, we'll go right into Photoshop. And if you have any questions, feel free to break in anytime. So the first one I'm going to deconstruct will be Feathers. And this is the end result. These are the images that I used to create it. The model was one of the models from one of my classes. And I used various feathers. And then I also used a lot of feather brushes that I have to make the image. And often when I start out, I really don't have an idea of what it's going to end up. I mean, I may have some kind of an idea, but I don't always know. For this one, I knew I was going to do feathers, but that was pretty much it because she already had feathers and it was going to be not too complicated to put together. So the first thing that I did was I made this background. I took it, just a blank document, into Rebel 5 and used some oil brushes and just did some different colors and ended up with this as a background. And also, I know that when I start out, I'm going to change the color tones at the end, which is what I usually wait until the end. And then I decide what kind of mood I want to set for my image, what kind of story I want to tell. And to me, all of that is color toning and lighting. So those to me are the two most important things. And that's why I use Restyle for most of my, well, for all of my color toning really. So you can use lookup tables, Photoshop lookup tables, but Restyle is just more, well, there's just more to choose from. It's easier to use. And it's, like I said, it's a classic Topaz Labs program. So I know that at some point it's going to become obsolete. As a matter of fact, they don't support it anymore as far as it's not ever going to be upgraded. But lookup tables, to me, don't really need to be upgraded. So, I mean, it's just serves its purpose. and hopefully I'll be able to use it for a long time to come because it's one of the most important things that I do. So what I did was I brought in the model, and you can see, let me just turn off some of these so you can see what I started with. So I started with the model, and I had already separated her out and put her as a PNG file so I could just drag her into this piece. So she started out like this, and then I took her into Topaz Labs Studio. Are most of you familiar with Studio and Topaz Labs?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. I still use Studio 1. I've got 1 and 2, but I use the AI remix on this, and I think it was Yellow Brick Road. So I changed her from that to that by just taking her through Topaz. And at that point, I started adding some of the feathers to her. And you could just see I was just kind of filling in as I went. And then I actually duplicated her. Again, it just kind of filled out a few more things. So at this point, I decided to take her through Restyle because I did not like these colors. They didn't appeal to me at all. So when I took her through Restyle, this is what happened. I mean, it totally changes the look and gives it a totally different feel, a different mood. And I'd be happy to show you Restyle if you want to see it. Just, let me know. But anyway, this is what she ended up with after going through Restyle. And let me just see. I did turn the opacity down to, looks like 95. So at this point, I'm just finishing up and adding a few more feathers. Some of these are from my feather brushes. And I'm also doing like color dodge and turning the opacity down so they're all looking a little different. Still adding a few feathers. And I think this was all feather brushes right here. More feathers. And then I did a hue and sat on one of the feathers. I'm just refining at this point. So another feather. And you can see that I'm using different blend modes as I go, just depending on what I want the feather to look like, each individual feather. And then I did a levels just to bring up the brightness a little bit. And then I took it through texture effects. And I used, this is called Crisp Morning Run, which is one of my favorite effects in there. And you can see, let me disable this. So what I did was, this is what it looked like. And then I did a little bit of darkening again in different areas to just change the colors and the lighting a little bit. And then to finish it off, I added these squares and my logo, and that was it. So any questions or anything you want to know about that one?
I'm curious as to your reasoning behind adding the squares.
Well, these squares are, sometimes you can do them with the marquee tool, but what I did with these squares, let me show you, they're actually frames. So they're in lumosity mode at 37%, but if I take them to normal, This is what they look like. And they're just frames that I had. I have a frame folder, which I'll show you in just a second here. And back to Lumosity. So I have so many folders. I save everything, and I mean everything, literally. I have folders for everything. But let me find my frames here. So these are frames that I have. And I think I just picked one. I'm not sure exactly which one it was. But you can see I have tons of them. And I just picked one and sized it and changed it, the blend mode for it.
Where do you get your frames?
Well, I'm a collector, and honestly, I probably have saved everything from over the years. They've come from all different places. I did leave a resource sheet with Kevin that has some of the places that I go to get things, but I've bought them from like, you could go on Pixabay and find frames that are free for commercial use. You can find them on just different places where you can buy digital elements. I get a lot from my art classes. We get resources every month, different things. It might be textures, it might be just ribbons, or it could be anything. So I save everything. I'm a collector.
Cheryl, somebody has asked, can you change the color within the frames?
Within the frames?
Yes.
Sure. I mean, you could just click on, for instance, Hue and Sept, and do a clipping mask, and then you can. Well, let me see. I'm on normal. Yeah. Okay. I need to change it out of Lumosity to do that, I think, though. So let's just see if you can change it. Can't see it really well, but you can change it different colors here. If you just do a clipping mask, and you can change it to anything you want.
Right.
Now, another way you can do the squares, which I've done occasionally, is you can use your marquee tool. Like, you could take this, and then you would do like a Control J, for instance. Okay, and then you can go into here. I think I can do this right. I can't see it very well, but you can do a drop shadow, and you can do, you can change the opacity. Actually, it's, I think, yeah, it's the right one. You can put a stroke on there. You can do a lot of things by just taking it through here.
Mm-hmm.
Into there.
And a lot of your frames were PNG files. Can you say a tiny bit about that? I've never used those. Is that
you never used PNG files? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I only use PNG files. I mean, I save everything as a PNG file because when you go to all the trouble to make a selection and have it on a transparent background, you want to save it as a PNG file because it keeps the transparent background, and you can just drag and drop it into anything. So everything that I ever make a selection of, I do it before I add it to my work. So I'll take something in, open it up, make a selection, turn off all of the other layers so it's on a transparent layer, save it as a PNG file. So the next time I want to use that, it's already selected. It's on a transparent background. I can pull it into my Photoshop file, drop it in there. You don't have to do anything. I mean, I literally save everything. Anytime I go to the trouble to make a selection, I'm going to save it as a PNG file.
No, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like when I first started, I was saving everything as like a Photoshop file. And then later on, I really learned that, you know, it takes up less space, and you don't have to open a Photoshop file. You just drag and drop it in, and it's it saves you a lot of work if you're ever going to use that again.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions on this one? It's pretty simple, but I think from, you know, what we started out with, it changed it quite a bit by the color toning. I end up with blues for some reason. I like the blues. So like this month, everything I've created just about has been blue, some form or another. But I do like to color tone. To me, that's the most important thing, because it changes the whole mood of the piece. And I always want to tell a story, and I always want to portray some kind of emotion. And for instance, if I had left it the green and tans that I started out with, it would be a totally different piece. It would have a totally different feel. And it just, you know, I would never have been happy with it. So I often start out knowing that it's going to change, no matter how I start out. When you color tone at the end, it pulls everything together. Because when you're compositing, you're pulling in things from so many different places, and they're all going to be different hues and colors. And I mean, there's a lot of ways you can blend, but color toning is one easy way for me to just make everything go together, because it changes the skin tones, it changes the hair, it changes everything, and it just pulls everything together. And that's why I love Restyle so much, because it's just really easy for me to use, and it makes such a difference in everything.
Cheryl, there's been another question here. Well, there's two. One is, you said you don't have a plan when you start, but what is your thought process when deciding what to do to an image? And I think you've addressed that somewhat in the last couple of minutes, but is there anything else you?
Well, I mean, I might have a plan, a general plan, but I work very visually. So I am constantly going back and forth. The ones that I'm showing tonight are pretty direct and, you know, easier to understand. If you looked at some of my work, I'm adding things, I'm taking it back out later because I don't like it. Sometimes I'll get almost finished and it's just like, I liked it up to a certain point, but I don't like it anymore. And I will go back and just take all those layers out and start over. I just do it visually. It just has to get to a certain point where I feel like, okay, I like this, or this is finished. I mean, you almost can't add too much stuff. You can, I mean, you can keep going forever, but to me, it reaches a point where I finally figure that it's finished. In my mind, it's finished.
Right.
And if it's not, I have a working folder for every year. And there are a lot of pieces in there that never get finished because I just couldn't finish it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get it to the point where I liked it, where it made sense for me. I might go back next year and look through that folder and finish it. But, you know, I never throw anything away.
Right.
I keep everything.
This woman's, I know when you showed the original image of her hair was really beautifully lit. And I thought, oh, that looks so beautiful. And then you've covered it with these kind of patches of these variety of colors. But you can see how that works so well, because then it brings your attention more to her eyes and that beautiful blue feather kind of, it works better than the original image, the way you've arranged it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I hope so, but art is so subjective that, a lot of people will look at it and just say, well, I liked it better, I liked it better originally, but whatever. But I'm doing it mainly to please me.
Yeah.
And hopefully, other people will like it, but I try not to, I'll get comments sometimes, you should have done this or you should have done that, but, this is how I like it. And, if you don't like it, okay.
Nicely said.
Move on. Go look at, somebody else's art or something,
There's one more question. Do you use Lightroom and move your photos to Photoshop and then change them to
No,
PNG
I
file?
do not ever use Lightroom. Well, no, I take that back. When I am a photographer, I use Lightroom. I'm a bird photographer and water lilies. Those are the two things that I photograph now. I don't really call myself a photographer anymore. When I started out, I was a photographer to a certain point. I did all these photo shoots. Everything was only my work. And for a couple of years. And then it's like I was getting really frustrated because the art was becoming more important to me. And I could not I just couldn't take photos of things that I needed. I didn't have access to certain things. I didn't have, I might have a ladder and it wasn't what I wanted. And just, it got very frustrating. And so that's when I really started using a lot of stock images and just to me, the art became my passion. And the photography was a tool to help me create it, but it wasn't the only tool. I just gave myself permission to use whatever I needed to use to create my art, as long as I had, I could get a commercial license for it or whatever, because the art became the passion. So I'll use my birds in my photography. In my art. And if I do have things, I've got a lot of things that I've photographed that I will use maybe bits and pieces, but most of my art is textures, painting, photos. Like if I use a model, I've got literally hundreds. They're not the kind of models that, well, I use this one, but most of the models that I have are the way they're posed are very suggestive. And I just don't I just don't create that kind of art. So I'll use a face or their hands or maybe a dress so I Frankenstein my stuff together a lot of times, and then I'll paint over the whole thing. It's just, I give myself permission to create art however I want to create it.
Nice.
I don't put limits on myself, and I don't. I do exhibit. I do sell my work. I don't enter shows because obviously, it's not all my photography. But I'm happy with doing what I do, with just exhibiting, selling, and just creating.
Great. There's a question here about the composition of this image. I understand that the large frame draws us to her face. Can you comment on why the smaller frame is there? Is it just a balance?
Just because I wanted it there. I just felt like it balanced out the piece a little bit more. A lot of times I just do things visually because I just thought with the big frame there, it wasn't finished. To me, I needed something to balance out that lower third or half.
Yeah.
So that's why I added it. Sometimes there's really no rhyme or reason. It's just because it looked good to me.
Yeah. So. I'm excited to see your next image. I wonder if we could move on.
All right. Yes. Okay. This is City Lights. And I picked this. I love to do cityscapes, and this was one of the more photographic ones. So I decided to do it. And these are basically the images that I used to create it. This big red bus was on, it's a Pixabay image that I found. And I do like city streets. I like, this had wet pavement where it was shiny. And I knew this was going to be a night scene because almost all my city art is night. So I thought it would work really well for me. So when I start my images, I typically start with a blank screen, just a transparent document. That's what I open up. And then I'll add a texture or sometimes I'll just do a gradient, just something to give me a floor and a ceiling or whatever, just to start. But I added this texture because I knew it was going to be night. And this texture is Bernie Tufts, Tuffs. She's a digital artist that I work with. She's in the UK and she creates a lot of really cool textures and she gives some to the class, but she has an Etsy shop and she has some really great textures that are unique. So if you ever want any, you could look her up on Etsy. So I use this texture mainly because of all the lights. And I thought that it would give me, I knew I was going to blend in that bus and that it would give me some lights in the background. And then I added the second texture, which is also Bernie's. And let me just enable this. So I added this one because it just added a little bit of color to those lights. And then I added, well, this one I added, this is not exactly the way I did this. So let me just see. This is the original I pulled into Photoshop and placed it where I thought it should be. And I had cropped off some of it because I knew I wasn't going to use, I kind of enlarged it and cropped off some of the people on both ends. Then I needed to bring the road up. And so I did a duplicate and pulled it underneath and to make the road come up where I needed it to be. We just enable this again. And this is where I blended. And then a lot of the blending actually came from the group mask. So this is what I ended up with by the time I did blend the street in and blend some of this into the background. So it's starting to come together. The next thing I did was I painted over the bus. If you can see, I don't like to have any writing or in my city scenes, I don't like to show where this is because I want whoever's looking at this to imagine it could be their city or it could be whatever city that they want it to be. So I cover up anything that's identifying in an image. So that's what I did. I added paint to that. And then I added this lady with her umbrella. Just enable that. And I mask off everything except her, just because I wanted a focal point in the back to kind of draw the eye into the picture and to balance the bus. So I just added her. Then I added some just dots, color dodged them. Let me show what they look like. Okay, so this is what they look like before color dodging. They were just some random circles. And then I did this. And what I do on a lot of my stuff is I just add random elements, lines, dots, whatever, because it adds interest. And it's not something you necessarily notice, but it just gives more depth to it. So I added a random little ribbon element up there and did it color dodge as well. This is what it looked like normal. So I use a lot of different blend modes to make things look different. Then I decided I added another, this is like a building, like an overlay, but I blended and masked most of it out. Then I decided I wanted to make it a little more painterly. So I took it through impressions. And this is Degas Dancer. So if you're familiar with impressions, this is one I use a lot. So I just made it, as you can tell, made it a lot more painterly. Then I decided, this is one of those things where I'm making decisions here that I don't like something. So I put that building on there, but I didn't like the fact that it was too bright. So I darkened it some. And I guess I must have done a stamp layer there. I don't see any change there. Okay. Then I did some more painting. Brushes are really easy to use instead of trying to make corrections with the healing brush or cloning or whatever. It's just so easy just to paint. So I painted over this little area here that I didn't like. Then I took it through Restyle. And this is called Jazz Evening. It's one of the night options. And I brightened it up quite a bit. It's actually at 50%. I try to make sure I put whatever the opacity is, so I'll remember if I have to go back and redo it. So then I added this little squiggle thing up here. It's actually musical notes, but I changed them to soft light and it changed them totally. I'll show you. This is what it looked like. I just wanted something up there that was bright. And then I did just like some scribbles and more paint. And then I did some gold paint. So this is just me adding things that I think make it more interesting.
Beautiful.
Then, see, I guess I did a stamp layer here. And then I decided at the very end that it was too vibrant. So I took the vibrance down. Actually, let's see. I disable it. That's what it looked like. But then I masked some of it back in, took it out in different places. And this is what we ended up with City Lights. So, any questions?
That's great. Great example of the way you work and how you created that.
Yeah, it's just I experiment. I'm just trying different things, and I just, you know, something doesn't work, I take it out and keep going until it looks like I want it to look.
Yes.
So
somebody wrote and said they love it.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. So is there anything else that you want me to go over, or?
Somebody's asked, do you have any suggestions of an online place I can learn some of these techniques? I guess what pops in my mind is where you and me connected on Sebastian
Michaels. The very first course is Photoshop Artistry. I think it's Fine Art Grunge. It's not really grunge, but what it does is it really teaches you, you might know, you kind of have to know a little bit about Photoshop, but it basically teaches you Photoshop, and it teaches you how to create art out of your photography. And that's the first course. And then when you finish that, the Awake course is like the premium course, and it really gets into the art part. Although the Photoshop Artistry, the Fine Art Grunge does get you going. It gets you started. I mean, Sebastian's classes, I it changed my life because my art changed so much after taking his courses. And I'm on the Kazon project, which is the one above Awake. And it's just sort of an ongoing thing. So I've been doing it for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. But it's just every month in the Kazon project, well, you get tons of resources. The models you get, I mean, like Jay Johnson, I don't know if, well, most photographers know Jay Johnson's daily textures. A lot of them use her textures. So she donates like a whole set of textures every month to the class. Colby Files does models, and he donates like 25 models every month to the class. I mean, you get so many resources. And the same thing for the Awake group too. You get just all kinds of things that you can use to create with. And you know, you just have to be open. I know as photographers, you want to use your own work. And I totally understand that because I started out that way too. But my journey just went a different direction. It just kind of, the art just became more important to me than anything else. And it still is my passion. Although I am getting out of real brushes, real canvas, and I'm going to start painting. Just because I need something different right now. And all the AI art is just, you know, causing so much turmoil in our art classes. I mean, our art groups. And
right. Yeah.
So, so I just want to kind of go back to the basics and just, you know, do some real painting and get some paint on me, and you know, but then I'll be still doing digital art. It's just sometimes you need to do something different for a while. So
any other questions for Cheryl? So beautiful. Cheryl, you've done a great job in teaching us a lot tonight, and not only about the techniques and your resources, but about your creative journey and process, and you know, how you said the art has become more important than anything else, whether it's you know, acceptable to a photo competition is kind of secondary to
it is. I've never I just didn't want any. To me, art should have no rules, you know. And for me, it doesn't have any rules. I mean, I have to have, you know, if I'm going to use something, I need an artistic license. I buy an artistic license, but I want to be free to just create whatever I can imagine and not be held back by, you know, rules. I guess I've always been a kind of a rebel, I guess, as far as that goes. And so, you know, that's where my journey has taken me. But I mean, I still love photography. I still love, you know, but it's a tool for me more than anything else right now. So.
Well, I think
I have a question, if I may. So where do you see this AI generated art going? I mean, it is causing quite a.
So Dennis, I don't want to get off on that one too much.
Oh, okay.
We're going to run out of time for Cheryl. It's late where she is, and
okay, that's fine. That's fine.
You can say one sentence, Cheryl, if you want. But
yeah, it's here to stay, and you know, the art world's going to just have to decide what to do about it. It's going to, I mean, and the art is so good. It's becoming better and better, and it's going to discourage a lot of people from creating art, because you can't compete with a machine that, you know, it goes through hundreds and thousands of art pieces and comes up with something in minutes that a human couldn't create, you know, and a lot of people are using it as their own art. Like, I created this, and it's just going to cause a lot of major problems, and I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know where it's going to end. I think it's going to discourage a lot of people, and you know, the art world's going to have to deal with it one way or another. It's definitely here to stay, though.
Cheryl, I just want to let you go and read these 3 more comments. Thanks so much for this fascinating, and your art is beautiful. Loved your presentation.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me, and I enjoyed it, and I hope you got something out of it. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
Right.
I know you have to go. It's very late where you are. And
yeah, it's my bedtime.
take good care. Thank you
All right,
very much.
thank you. Thank you. Let me just.
Yeah.